And so the thing we need to realize here is that we need to look at this thing called a product. You know, this production, productivity, all comes from this word product. And so we really need to have a very clear definition of what a product is. And, you know, like you said before, it's like, the person buys the bread. This is actually a very important part of this definition. And so if we look at this definition of a product, a completed thing that has exchange value within or outside the activity. And we need to look at a couple of words very carefully or closely here. The first one is completed. It's like this, apart from, really everyone in your organisation firstly needs to realise that it's the product we pay for. And this can include a delivered service. We could say a delivered service is also a product. But we don't pay for your position, we don't pay for your activity or your action, we pay for the result you get, the product. And the second thing that every person in an organisation needs to understand is that this thing completed. And for every job, the definition of completed has its own definition. If it's a salesperson, completed is when they collect the money. Or in another organisation, another job, the sales could be when they get the signed contract. And so defining completed becomes very important. And every job should have its own product definition, which is really defining what is completed and then getting agreement through the organisation on what completed is. Because if you look, in many organisations, a lot of problems occur because the person doing the job has a different idea of what completed is to what the management might have. And so this starts to create problems, a lot of discussions and a lot of unnecessary activity. And the other thing is that it must have exchange value. So it needs to have some value to someone else inside or outside the organisation. And of course, if it has exchange value, what are some of the things that you can receive? Like if an employee is contributing a product, what's exchange do they get? Will they get money? It's like you pay an employee for actually producing their products. Yeah, sometimes it's salary. They get paid for their time. And, sometimes it's actually, they get paid for their contribution directly. It's like, okay, this is your agreement, you do this, and you do this many of them, we give you this much money. And obviously, for those people, it's a lot easier to focus on what the result is because the result's usually clearly defined in their contract when they first start. But there's other things too that an employee gets exchange. One of them is attention, admiration, tolerance. Have you ever had an employee that's like, you wouldn't really go down to the pub and drink beer with them, but you tolerate them because they're so productive. And so productive people earn tolerance. So if we look, every part of an organisation has its different products that go inside or outside of the organisation. And if we look at this in more detail, we already looked at this, the product of a salesperson, didn't we? Which was a sold products, or signed orders, or sold products. But if we look at it, gets a bit harder when we say, look, what's the product of a receptionist?
You can measure that pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can. It's pretty easy to measure.
Yep. So we can measure it, but what's the product that we would be measuring?
Product is a service or a delivery of a service.
Yeah. So how can we nail that? Let's say we hire a receptionist and go, okay, in one line, this is your product. And they go, okay.
It's a list of tasks.
There's definitely a list of tasks, but what's the result of those list of tasks? Can be, yeah, it'd be part of it. So, these, we're going to go through a few of these, but these are just definitions I've put down. They can be different for you and your organisation. So, don't necessarily run with them. They've got to be something that's true and works for your organisation. But for me, it's like, one line is cheerfully and swiftly handle connections. As a receptionist, look at what they do. They receive phone calls and, emails, faxes, people coming into reception, all, this whole transaction of people and connections. And they've basically got to hook them into where they need to go in the organisation. And also there's the outbound mail and all different things, and they've got to make sure they go out. And so they're the switchboard of the organisation. And of course, it can be much different. If you ring a bank, and you get an automated receptionist, is it like, do you think this really covers it cheerfully and swiftly? So of course, if the bank writes this down as their product and then does this other thing, it's like, now we have a bit of a problem. And so, but it might be the right thing for you. You might want to have what do they call it? Auto attendant, don't they? Have an auto attendant, and so, you know, for sure, it's just like handled connections. Okay, managing director. Who here owns their own business? So if you own your own business or you're going to hire a managing director, what is the product? What's the thing that you can pay for? Yeah, they do a lot of things, don't they? You know, they've got to manage the team and execute the strategy and, you know, handle sales and finance and, you know, all the different divisions of an organisation. But what is it you pay them for?
Productivity, just plain results.
Results? Yeah, but what results? So let's say I hire you to be my managing director in 3 years' time. What results should you achieve?
Well, I hope that I can at least continue 20% profitability each year.
Yeah. And growth, yeah? Yeah, that's right. So we could say a viable and expanding business or organisation. And it's really simple. It's actually, you know, if you want to hire these people, you just write an ad, you know, say, you know, general manager. And, you know, we're looking for you to come in and expand our business by 300% over the next 5 years while, you know, increasing profit even more. And it's going to be a really tough job. You're going to find it really difficult. We're not going to pay you so much salary, but we're going to give you a great reward when you make the milestones. So if you're tough and you reckon you can do this, you should apply. This is pretty much a general manager ad. You'll get about 10 applications off this ad. But the thing is, I only want the 10. I only want the 10 people to read that and go, wow, that looks so tough and not much pay. But, oh, big rewards. This is who you want. And they come in and you show them the job, and normally it's like, you know, you can pay. We've hired, or our clients have hired many general managers for, say, where they should be getting paid $150,000 to $200,000 a year for the size of their organisation, they're paying $50,000. But, you know, these people can make, you know, $500,000, $1 million bonuses, you know, after their second and third year by making the company 10 times that money. And these gentlemen come in and go, you know, generally, if a general manager needs salary to survive, you don't want to hire them. It's like, because, you know, if you're running an organisation and the person can't run their own finances, it's like, how do you expect them to run yours? And so it's simple. You say, okay, so here's the deal, and normally what they'll need to do is they normally will come and spend a week in the organisation and investigate it for themselves to see if they can make the bonuses, if they can actually achieve the milestones. And if they don't do that step, then it's already a warning sign. Because it's okay, if this person's willing to take this risk on and not even know what it is, then what are they going to do with my business? What about a human resource manager? Which, you know, a lot of companies have human resource managers. No one really quite knows what they're meant to produce. So we could say ethical and productive staff members. Ethical, as a very raw definition, is like, you know, you make an ethical decision, it leads to something better. You make an unethical decision, it leads to something worse. And, you know, the good human resource managers, they know this product, but quite often it's hard for them to really monitor it, because they, you know, to know whether the HR manager is doing a really good job, they need to see every individual in the organisation and how productive they are, and whether they actually improve their area each week or not. And this is actually the true measurement of a HR manager, is like, if I have 100 staff, what percentage improved their area that week? Okay, 93 did. Wow, I'm really pumping. 93%. Next week it's 67. Oh, wow. But, you know, of course there's other measurements, retention and other things, but ultimately, yeah, the HR manager is responsible for the productivity of the individuals in the organisation. And interestingly enough, the quality manager, his job is actually his result is not just the quality of the product, but the whole quality of the organisation, and really measure a quality manager off how much each person is producing in income as an average. So if there's 100 staff, they produce 100,000 in a week, it's $1,000 per staff member. And the quality manager's job is to see the quality of the organisation improves all the time, and it increases all the time. And next one, personal assistant. So not many of us in Australia have personal assistants. Go to China and there's heaps of them. But
Resilience.
Sorry?
Resilience.
Resilience? Yeah, that would be a quality, wouldn't it? Part of the beingness. But you put on, let's say you hire a personal assistant. Why are you hiring them? What result do you want?
Reduce your workload.
Yeah? Reduce.
On less important tasks.
Exactly. And so what result does that? What result? Or how could you say to your personal assistant in one line, this is your product?
To reduce my time on menial tasks.
Exactly. Time for the executive. And so you hire a personal assistant and go, okay, your job. So I could give you this big fat manual, but let's just throw that in the bin. I'll just give you this one line. You need to produce time for me to do the important, so I can actually carry out the important things. Okay, boss, I got it. You know, off this person runs, and then, you know, next thing you know, 2 weeks later you have some appointment with someone, wants to sell you some multi-level marketing system. And it's like, how did this person get in here? You just get your personal assistant and say, listen, that didn't get my product. Go sort it out. And it's amazing how much you can reduce the amount of having to talk about issues when the organisation is product focused. And it's quite interesting too, because the more product focused an organisation is, remember we had the categories of workers, the more product focused the organisation is, the less the people down this end, the suppressive people and the troublemakers, can survive in the organisation. It's harder for them to. But when there's not much attention on productivity, let's say it's some government department put there just to help the unemployment levels, it becomes a breeding ground, a hotel for these guys. And so the more you can put attention on productivity, the more you can get your staff focused on the product they're meant to produce, the more you can measure it and pay people by that, you know, the more naturally you'll just have performers and effective doers in your organisation. What about property developer? This is actually more of an organisational product.
Build homes.
Yeah, it could be build homes. You know, it depends really on the organisation. But, you know, we say desirable and functional accommodation it sells for more than it costs. But if you're building, say, developing, you know, in Western Australia and Karratha for the mining towns, it's like, you know, desirable probably wouldn't be part of the product, would it? And so how you word up products for each job, each department, the whole organisation becomes quite important to get a good alignment. And so you start off with what's the product of the organisation, and you can work back up through the organisation from that, and everything needs to align. And so every person's product or products that they produce should actually end up with the company's product. And the company itself, or the organisation itself, should really only produce or take on things that fit within that product. So if you're a property developer, it's like, you know, going out and selling chewing gum doesn't quite make sense. Doesn't fit into the product. But we can also look at these outside of the organisation. Because it's like everything that every action should lead to some sort of product. And so we can look at, say, the product of a student, which per that, it would be you right now. So what would you say the product of a student is? Like, what's your product for being here today and, you know, wearing the hat of a student?
Education.
Sure, yeah. So I could, give you the phone book and give you some education on phone numbers.
You educate us in the ability to run your business better and employ people.
Yeah. And if you look at it, you know, really, as a student, all we want to learn about is actually, we want to learn about how, you know, here's a goal. You know, most people have a goal, right? Especially business owners and executives, they have a goal. But to reach that goal, there's something in the way. There's usually these things called barriers. And so really, any training or education is really on how to overcome these barriers more easily. And so as a product, we could say that it's knowledge that can be applied that leads to a more successful life. Does this make sense? And so if someone's doing a course, or they're going to school, or they're going to kindergarten, and, you know, they should be getting knowledge that leads to a more successful life. Unfortunately, I look back at my schooling and I think, wow, if I'd really applied this back then, there's probably a lot of subjects I would have just gone out the back and, you know, not attended. I probably could have got more benefit, you know, playing tennis or footy. And, what about a politician?
Bullshit as many people as possible. That's the product.
Yeah. You know, it was quite interesting. I made these slides a few years back, and this is the product I had as a politician, which is a nation or constituency that is protected, fair, in harmony with the environment, and where the population's prosperity and living standards are increasing. And then one day I was feeling a little bit like, masochistic, and I turned on the ABC and I was listening to Parliament. And I realised that it's like, as a politician, the product is actually... I don't know if I have it on this one.
You've changed the product.
The product is actually a victorious election. And I realised that, when you listen to Parliament, it's like, this here is a product of government. And the product of a politician is just to win the election. And, for some politicians, that means taking out the person you're meant to have allegiance to. So you've got to be quite ruthless and, to some degree, quite unethical people. But the problem that I realised, like listening to Parliament, was that it's like these guys hardly ever take their politician hat off. So they sit in Parliament where they're meant to be doing government, and I hate to work out the hourly rate of Parliament, but it has to be like $1 million an hour or something, with all what it costs to run the building and everything else. And they sit there and they have question time. Did anyone ever listen to question time?
It's worse than a schoolyard.
You realise why it's called question time, because they can't call it answer time, because there's no answers. But I realise it's like, in our political system within Australia, there's no time. There's really very little time to govern. These guys are constantly got to have their politician hat on. And, it's a little bit sad in some ways. What about an investor? Person invests, what's the result they're going for? Yeah?
For the investment.
Yeah? But, look at it, it's like, why does a person go out and start investing? It's like the profit's not really the result, the profit's the score, isn't it? So you could say that investor is basically a financially secured future. I invest here so that later on I have to have less and less attention on having to get money each week to survive. What about a parent? Who's got kids? Yeah. So what's the product of a parent?
Raise a child.
Sure, that would be the doingness. Raising a child and...
A good person.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to try and define good.
Yeah, we should. Why don't we look at defining good? Because we're going to...
That's election itself, isn't it?
Yeah, how about this? Again, these are mine. They don't need to be necessarily true for you. So I'm happy for you to disagree. That's more fun. But, for me, I've got a productive and independent person or people that add value to their community. So is this leading towards a definition of good?
Yeah, it's a much better definition than I had in my head.
I had more time to think about. I prepared these earlier. And so as a parent, it's like, even if you're having fun with your kids, or you take them to the beach, or, take them snowboarding, or you put them in school or piano lessons, or, lock them in their bedroom for a month, it's like it should be to lead to this product. Would you agree? And so it makes it much easier to be a parent when, you know that, okay, what I do should lead to that. And then what about who's married?
Not me.
Yeah, maybe you will be in a minute.
I hope not. Right.
But what would be the product of a husband or a wife? So you have a couple get together, they have some attraction, they enjoy each other's company, it's really fun getting to know each other, and, there's all the lust and the romance and everything else. And then, then it's like, okay, maybe we should get married. So what changes?
Don't look at me, I'm the wrong person to ask that question, so I'll tell you, absolutely the wrong person.
So, you have a wife. Obviously, you don't look like you're married yet. And so what's the product?
It's supposed to be happiness.
Yeah.
I like that, supposed to be happy.
Sure. Then about happiness, it's like, actually, it's a pity, because I used to have the whole section on happiness here, but we've cut back the time on the seminar. But if you look, happiness is something to do with goals, right?
Totally.
If a person's achieving their goals, and yeah, they're usually quite happy. And it's actually, we know that it's actually the overcoming of the obstacles. It's not actually reaching the goal that makes someone happy. When they reach the goal, if they don't create a new goal really quickly, they get unhappy. Have you ever noticed that? That's why you have these stupid terms like post-sports success syndromes and... Hey? Yeah, you know, when people retire, it's, you know, they're normally the first, it's a quick step towards death. It's true, you know, even statistically I can show you. Statistically I can show you that retired people are twice as likely to go into hospital as working people between 50 and 80. Including workplace injuries and everything else. So if you want to stay healthy, you'd keep working. It's like you're half the chance of actually ending up with having to go to hospital.
That's why they've increased their retirement age, realistically.
Yeah, well, that and the fact that, you know, we don't bring enough people in the country to support the productivity or the production we need to get out of it. Hence why you can't find mechanics, and, you know, it's hard to find fridge mechanics, and because, you know, we have this whole mining industry that's just taking, you know, hundreds of thousands of staff, but there's not new staff to come and service the industry. But anyway, if we look at this husband and wife thing, this, again, my definition is I've got here, you and your spouse reaching your individual and common goals faster because you're in a relationship. You can see here the first step is you need to know your spouse's goals. And, you know, especially for business owners, quite often, you know, the business becomes more important or can take a lot more attention than the family or the wife or the husband. And, you know, it's like, oh, I've got to make this work for the family. I've got to make this work for the family. But, you know, you need to know really what each family member's goals are, because per this, if it's true, your job is to actually furnish, you know, everything you can so the people in your family can reach their goals. And, you know, quite often when I sit down with business owners and I go, do you know what your wife or your husband's goals are? It's like, they don't know. I go, oh, I don't know. Sometimes, oh yeah, well, I suppose it's to look after me so that the business can do better. And this creates a few issues in the marriage. And so this is actually the same product for any relationship. Any sort of partnership. You take a business partner on, it's no different. But the thing is, so you go take a business partner on, it's the same thing, isn't it? You take this business partner on because it's like you figure that personally you'll reach your goals faster and the company or organisation will reach its goals faster because of this partnership. Would you agree? And so if a person goes out and they're going, okay, I make my wife my partner, or I make my brother a partner because I want to help them, I want them to be part of it, it's like it's a different product. And this is why quite often, you know, it creates some problems 5 years down the track when we've lost so much money and my brother doesn't work and but, you know, okay, so what was the original intention you went into that relationship, that partnership? And the last one, a child. What's the product of a child?
Cost.
To be happy.
They're pretty good investment, though, kids.
Are they?
Yeah. I think I get a good return on investment from mine. So, but as a child, it's like, you know, they have a product and it pretty much has to align with this a little bit, doesn't it? And so, you know, for me, what I worked out is there's contributions to the family and the community. And, you know, this happens when a child's first born and they pop their first smile. It's a pretty good contribution. They smile and go, look, he's so cute. Oh. And as a baby, they're going, wow, that worked really well. I might do that again.
I don't know. Everyone seems to be having babies in our organisation. Everyone's very, very tired.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much they're contributing at the moment.
Sure. But, you know, that's probably because they need a little bit of training too on how to, you know, get children through the night.
The poor guys who are just not getting any sleep. Yeah.
I never had that problem. Never had that problem with my kids.
That's why I'm afraid of having children.
I had a great mother-in-law, and within a week, she stayed with us. And as much as, like, you know, we have an interesting relationship between us, but I'll tell you, like, within a week, she got our kids sleeping right through the night. It's amazing.
I'm going to give it to a lot of people.
Yeah. So it was really amazing. It's like from after a week, that was pretty much it. They would sleep, you know, 8-9 hours. But obviously you break quite some rules, because nowadays you're meant to wake them up and feed them every 3 or 4 hours and all sorts of crazy stuff. But I liked her idea. You never wake them up if you want to sleep. But the thing is, you can actually measure this, and you can play games with your children, and, you know, as they get older and older, they can contribute. And, you know, from a very young age, at 15 months old, they start walking and they see you clean the table up and they run over and they want to try and help and they pick a plate up. And, you know, the thing is, let them contribute. Even if they smash the plate, it's much cheaper than when they're a teenager now, they do nothing. And so wherever possible, let them contribute. And if they want something, you know, try and make it into a game. Go, cool, you know, you want that? If you can contribute these things, it's for sure you can have whatever you want. But it's, you know, it's a very interesting and actually one of the most fun jobs. I mean, it's the best part of my life is being a parent. So, you know, don't be put off by the horror stories, because the horror stories are just, you know, very easy to observe, but they're very minor in the whole scheme of things. So, we know, and exactly like you said, but the first thing is we know that we have to be able to name a product and be able to measure it. So if we can't name the result of a particular job or a particular activity, normally that job or that activity in your organisation is not valuable. You know, or you just haven't tried. The person hasn't tried hard enough to be able to actually work out how to really nail the product. And you can see how simple the naming is, like for a receptionist, and as you start to drive down and down and down, it's like it becomes simpler and simpler. And it also makes the job simpler and simpler for the person. And then also you have to be able to measure it. Like you said, receptionist, quite easy to measure. If you can't measure it, it's not the right product, again, not the right name. And so if a salesperson goes, yeah, my product is to make customers happy. Well, okay, how do we measure that? And actually, what's the value in that? Because quite often, you know, you can have one salesman that makes many unhappy customers. And then you have another salesman and all the customers are happy. But this guy could be selling 20 times more. And the reason there's unhappy customers is because he just doesn't waste time with guys that waste time. And so they go, oh, you know, he left, he was so rude, he just like, said I wasn't going to buy and he just left. Okay. It's like, it comes down to not, you know, so much happy customers, but what the result is. And it's easy with a productive sales guy. Okay, we give you a little bit of training to, this is how you depart from a customer, so there are no unhappy ones. It might take 5 minutes to train the guy on that, but it could take you 5 years to train this guy to get his sales up.